Welcome to NFL Daily, where every general manager starts to look the same after a little while. I'm Gregg Rosenthal here in the Indianapolis Convention Center alongside my friend, fresh off the road, off of hugging half of these general managers because you're friends with all of them, Jourdan Rodrigue of The Athletic.
That was so nice. You know what I did appreciate, Greg? And it's great to be here with you. One general manager that we will get to in a moment actually had as good of a jacket game as you did.
Oh, you're talking about James Gladstone.
Sure am.
Let's talk about it. I was able to meet this young man. You knew him already. He's going to be on the show.
Young man.
I mean, he is a young man to me. He's much younger than me.
Yes, he is.
And he looks young even for his age. How did we describe him? Kind of like a beachy vibe, but with a little Patrick Bateman mixed in there.
Like
that's a compliment.
In a good way, because I think that a lot of people are starting to learn about James. He's a bit of a killer.
Okay, so James Gladstone is the new general manager of the Jaguars. He's joining the show today. John Spytek, the new general manager of the Raiders, talked about the quarterback situation there. Talked about how my friend, my personal trainer, wants it fixed. And so those are two interviews we're going to get to later in the show. We taped some other interviews as well that we're going to be playing throughout the week. I'm really excited for everyone to listen to that. But I want to work backwards here. We actually started today's show, and this is the day, just to set the scene, Tuesday at the NFL Scouting Combine, now has evolved into the day where most general managers and coaches speak.
Yes.
There's still a couple stragglers who are going up late even as we're taping, but we got to do a show. About 45 of them spoke on Tuesday. A handful will speak on Wednesday as well. So this show is partly going to be about what we learned from all the press conferences. And I decided before the day even started, I just wrote a number. The show is going to be called 47 Things We Learned from these press conferences, and then work backwards from there. So we just tried to learn 47 things, and then we stopped learning.
13 more digits than James Gladstone has years.
There you go. And it worked.
It blows my freaking mind.
It was kind of amazing. We almost naturally got it down to 47. I had to make some editing choices.
Yeah, we were honking in the Google Doc.
It was basically right there, and I love this week. Look, I got to see one of the greatest of all time, Nikola Jokic, have his career high in assists, second most ever for a center last night at the Pacers game. You just walk like 3 blocks away. There's great NBA basketball for shockingly cheap prices. And then on my way home, Drew Rosenthal, the super agent, just stops me, and I got both earbuds in and my head down and a hat.
Was it your famous hat?
No.
Greg has a hat that makes him look really famous.
No, and he was Greg, and he's like, hey, great job with your 101. You keep at it. Like, you really know your stuff. I was like, wow, thank you, Drew Rosenthal, super agent.
So did you say thank you, Drew Rosenthal, super agent?
I wish I had.
I wish you would have. I think he would have loved that.
I was so taken aback and was in the middle of like my Celtics podcast that I'm listening to that I was like, oh, thank you. And then I wish. You think of what you should have said after the fact. I would have liked to hear among his clients, who did he think was too low? Because usually they're complaining about, oh, you didn't have him too high, too low. I would have liked to hear his opinion, but
I got to tell you though, he was it was a drive-by compliment, which means he was certainly not looking to engage in a deep conversation, Greg.
No.
So I actually think it went perfectly, because you really could have kept him lingering there like way longer than he planned, and then he'd be like, I'm not going to compliment that guy next time. He's just going to talk to me all day.
Come on. Maybe he wanted to talk. Yeah, that was wild. I shouldn't have been surprised I ran into someone. It was outside of St. Elmo's, the famous steakhouse. I mean, if you've been to Indianapolis for the Combine once, you've heard these stories before, and there is something pleasingly familiar about it all, including all these press conferences. Let's get to it. Number 1 on our list of 47 things we learned. I do think it was ultimately the most significant news of the day. Travis Kelce is expected to return to the Kansas City Chiefs for the 2025 season. Brett Veach first broke the news at the podium. Mm-hmm. Surprising. You don't usually get big news at the podium. He then later was on NFL Network. Let's take a listen. This is him with Tom Pelissero.
It seems like we're going to get good news on Travis Kelce. Can we turn off the Twitter alerts? Can we put it to bed? Is he definitely playing in 2025?
I think so. I mean, there's been a lot of the timeline and deadlines, and that's something that we as an organization haven't discussed, and we anticipate Travis being back, and if something changes, I'm sure NFL Network will be the first to break it, right? But
we would hope so.
Yeah.
You can help with that if you want.
No, I think we're excited to have Travis back, and that's how we're operating this offseason, and kind of go from there.
Okay, so I'm surprised. I didn't think we were going to get to watch Travis Kelce play football again. It's interesting, I think, from a Brett Veach perspective, because that's $17 million less in cap space you have to work with. They obviously want Travis Kelce back, but there would have been positives and negatives to both sides. I'm just saying.
I feel like he's made them a lot of money, actually, recently. So I feel like in a roundabout way, he has helped make them a lot of money recently. So I feel like that's a small potatoes thing for the GM to be worried about. They can manage it. They'll be fine. The thing that's interesting, you talk to players about this near the end of their career, and then those who ponder potential retirement or even taking a break or taking a longer runway to think about things. It was a quick decision because there was a deadline on it, but it also is interesting. He didn't go out. If he went out this year, it would have been, I think, a sour taste in his mouth because of the way he finished the season, because of the way the Chiefs finished the season. You rarely get the shiny fairy tale ending, but I kind of think this man does believe in fairy tales. I mean, look at his life.
That is absolutely true. This is a man who just expects great things to happen.
Yeah, manifests
and he's
incredible things.
He's made it all happen. Sometimes it's not a fairy tale ending. We'll have more on another tight end in just a little bit. Number 2 on our list. We gotta,
we're gonna roll. We gotta roll.
Crank today.
Yeah.
Terry Fontenot was at the podium and quickly and aggressively said that their plan remains the same. Michael Penix is their starting quarterback. Kirk Cousins is their backup quarterback. And Kirk Cousins is going to remain with the Falcons for the foreseeable future. Do you buy it?
I buy it. I'm not surprised. I was texting with someone over there the other day about Michael Penix and just the glowy nature of the conversation and the way that he throws the ball, the way that they see him throw the ball in the reps that we don't see on the outside in practice. He obviously popped. I'm not surprised when he did get playing time. I am not surprised by this.
But do you buy that Kirk Cousins is going to be on the team? I don't.
Oh, that part? No, I don't buy. I don't buy that part.
I just was surprised.
Not one bit. No, but
Fontenot came out so strongly.
The Penix thing that's real love right there. But the rest of it, I mean, I don't know. I think that's what you say when you're trying to drive up a trade price.
I agree. This is line season in the NFL. Really,
I would never lie to you, Greg.
It's regular season, but the draft in general, especially pre-free agency, is line season. Fontenot also said he was totally surprised that Kirk Cousins had an injury. The first he learned of it, he indicated, was when Kirk Cousins talked to the media. So it does feel like they're covering themselves.
I do love that. It's like it's a way of saying there's no way, because of course I would know about this. So there's no way that was anything other than hedging.
If anything, that's kind of making his guy Kirk Cousins looks bad. I still believe strongly that he will be traded, and I think what that statement is to the rest of the league, we are not cutting him. You have to give us something. And if the best we can do for Kirk Cousins is that we're going to pay part of his salary and get a 5th-round pick, then that's better than nothing, and that's what we're aiming for. Maybe he's aiming for higher. We'll see. I do not buy that one. All right, points 3 through 6 were from Omar Khan, the Steelers GM. He has said, ownership said it, and now he said it, they were happy with Russ and Fields, and they specifically say they've talked to both representatives, and they want either one to come back. Very unique. I don't remember a free agency quarterback situation quite like that, where they're openly saying, we don't want both of them back. We do want one of them back. And he's almost leveraging the agent.
You guys pick. That's basically what it is. It's like
you guys pick about who's going to take less money.
You guys pick who's going to who's taking this job. And it's fascinating to me.
They must have a favorite though.
They have to. It is lying season.
They did play Russell Wilson most of the year, so that you would think that would be him. But long term, Fields makes more sense.
It is interesting. It's to me very overt way to drive the ultimate price down. But I do think it's funny where he's basically like, decide amongst yourselves.
I know. And it's
like so funny to me.
He also, like a lot of the GMs that spoke today, said, look, they want multiple ways to attack the position. I think they'll draft someone too, whether it's early or not. We'll see. I said points 3 through 6. He said a few things. They want to get a deal done with TJ Watt. He's not going to be a guy that's on the trade block. He was pretty strong saying, we want Pickens. We want George Pickens to be great. We want him to be great here.
Yeah.
We expect him to be here. My friend Bill Barnwell threw him out as a potential trade candidate. I actually do kind of believe Con here because I don't think the market would be worth getting rid of a guy that's that talented. And then he also used the term fake news in an answer to a question about Matthew Stafford. We could have a little bit of your Stafford intel at this point. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, those front offices, both of them have a great relationship, and they are in near constant communication throughout the course of the year. And obviously you can't be right now, but during the season, they were on the phone with the Steelers talking about what it would look like for a Cooper Kupp situation.
Interesting.
So I have to imagine other people came up at that time as well. But it is interesting. Like, I just think Matthew Stafford, he's a bullet point, so we're not going to get to it quite yet. But he's going to come up on a few teams that you have
just
listed
give it
here.
to me. Give it to me now.
It's been so fluid. So I reported earlier this week that, the Rams gave his agent, Jimmy Sexton, permission to talk to other teams about his contract terms. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that serves a lot of purposes. That is a fact check. Is his market really what he thinks it is and the agent thinks it is? Or is it more aligned to what the Rams think it is, which is lower because there is a discrepancy between the two numbers? It's this multiple truth situation that something has to give where I fully believe that both sides want to get a deal done. I don't know that it will get done. Right.
We talked with Tom Pelissero really at length about this on Monday's show. I'm losing track of the days that happens in Indianapolis. And he talked about there's only a couple places that really are fits. And what I picked up from Omar Khan, the way he said fake news, that really was an answer to me. And what Tom, who's connected, I don't know if the Steelers are a fit for Matthew Stafford. To me, that's a team I'm not going to cross off, but I would be very surprised.
I do think, especially with Pickens, the conversation about Pickens and wanting to develop and mature a little bit, I do think Cooper Kupp might be in the conversation.
Yes, I think that could make sense. They are a team that makes a lot of sense. And Khan did say they need to improve their wide receiver position. He also said he would do the Mike Williams and Preston Smith trades again. He doesn't regret them. Well, you should.
Is that fake news, maybe?
Yeah.
I would call
Mike Williams. He won a game and he was worth a shot. Yeah. And actually, for the right price, maybe he might even return there.
He did get them one more game than they otherwise would have
Preston Smith,
had.
You literally just cut and you gave up. You didn't give up much for him. So I guess maybe he was saying it was worth a shot. Didn't work out. All right, points 7 through 10 are all by our guy
Joe
Schoen. He needs a quarterback in both the draft and free agency. He pointed out multiple times, our only quarterback is Tommy DeVito. We need to attack this in multiple ways, and he deferred to the Rams when asked specifically about Matthew Stafford. But in the side session with beat reporters, their reporting from that was he mentioned multiple times, like, we are going to be aggressive.
Yes.
And again, we're back to our guy.
Yes, and my God, here we are back again, just like the Rams and Matthew Stafford as they were last year. Yeah, I do think that there are a couple of teams that will emerge as possible fits, and I think that the Giants are going to be one of them, and I also think that the Raiders are potentially
Those are the
one
two
of them.
ones that make the most sense.
And the thing with Dable and Shane right now, for me, this is just conjecture for me, just educated, like looking at things. I think he wants a chance to show his work. I think he wants a chance to really show this is the kind of coach I am capable of. This is the kind of schemer that I am capable of being. This is what I can really do. When you have a quarterback of that caliber and your job is in danger, it's not just about winning games and trying to go make an aggressive move to A, save both jobs, and B, try to really go for it. But also, I think he wants to show his work. I think that there's a lot of conversations about sort of a backslide with Brian Dable, and I think he's a good coach, and I think he's a smart offensive coach for sure. I think he wants to show it.
Yeah, and Stafford would give him that chance in the same way that he did for McVay a few years ago. Joe Schoen was asked, though, what matters most to him in a quarterback. Mentioned how his son is playing quarterback right now. and he said, I'll tell you the same thing that I tell my son. The two things that matter the most, completions and wins.
Oh, no. We're moving backwards as a community if he thinks wins are a quarterback stat.
I mean, I get it. He's running a team.
Explaining it to
it's not that it doesn't
son.
mean anything, but he said completions and wins. And the more that you hear from Joe Schoen, the more he just seems like the guy that you saw on Hard Knocks. Here is Joe Schoen being asked by your colleague, Kahlil Shakir.
Oh, the king of the combine is here.
Ian Rappaport
Ian, do you
walks
want to
in.
weigh in on
It's an
literally
audio
anything?
medium, so that didn't work.
so
Your
they
little
can't see
stop
me?
by. Also, I was just throwing to sound,
see a
so
camera
you're
literally
kind of
right
Yeah.
It'll be on air
Greg likes
there
to
too.
continue to pretend that we're not on air. It makes him feel safer.
My point is, no one can
So-
hear you if you're not near
Do you
a
want my
microphone.
mic? I'd be honored.
No.
Ian Rappaport off into the night. Let's listen to Joe Schoen. He was asked about his experience on Hard Knocks. If anyone from other teams have asked him, how it was.
Have any general manager called you to ask about what your experience was like last year, and if so, what have you told them?
No, I haven't gotten any calls on that. I think I know what I would tell.
And, I like that Joe Schoen can laugh about it. I think he knows that program did not reflect well at him. Neither does his record, frankly.
You know what? It was a topic of conversation among executives across the league when it came out. Like, I got a couple texts being like, what did you think? Honest opinion from people around the league who were wondering, because they're going to be the ones deciding whether or not they're going to be in this dang show. And oh, man, like.
They were critical. They were like, there's no there with that,
Yeah.
with that front office. And that's got to be hard to hear, even third hand. So Joe Schoen, and I don't think the Hard Knocks thing is happening for any other teams out there. Let's go to, those were, points 7 through 11 if you were really
We're
paying
actually
close. I
making
said
pretty
10.
good time, I think.
Liam Cohen. I just want to mention he's back, and he is swaying just as much. I don't know if you clocked this at the podium. The Duval. He didn't do that, but he was moving side to side the whole time, but seemed much more relaxed. So sometimes that first press conference is one thing, but then you see him, he's filling in who he is as a coach, and I like it. A little different vibe. And I do like that he said that their passing game will go through Brian Thomas Jr.
Smart, very smart, just good coaching right there. Good thinking, good plan. Brian Thomas Jr. rocks. He's a guy who rules.
A guy who was that good as a rookie, could have been Rookie of the Year.
Yes.
It was a different year, and is only going to get better. I think was kind of raw coming in terms of his route running and things, so I think he's going to improve. I love how strong he was. Of course, they also really spoke highly of Trevor Lawrence and all the ways that they're going to improve. We talked to James Gladstone a little bit coming up, so you'll hear that. That's the new Jaguars general manager. We also spoke with Dave Canales.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to hold that interview because maybe you guys could tell me differently. I don't feel like shotgunning like 5 straight interviews is what the listeners need. So we're gonna spread out the good stuff. And I really liked getting a feel of who Canales was as a person. But our 13th point here is just some factual stuff on their wide receivers. He said Xavier Legette, their first round pick, undergoing foot surgery.
Mm-hmm.
They're expecting he'll be back for training camp, maybe even some of the offseason. And he seemed in to me. I tried to ask him if they're bringing Adam Thielen back. That was maybe, of course, he would want Adam Thielen back. He almost seemed like it was up to Adam Thielen whether he wants to return. Because I was curious if they would bring back that same wide receiver core.
Yeah, I think they need to continue to add there via the draft specifically. And I don't know. To me, it sounded almost like bring another case of, okay, we've been talking about this with Dan Morgan, the GM, with ownership. Okay, bring the price down a little bit. Bring the price down a little bit. And maybe he's back.
I hope he's back. He's a great player. And I loved what Canales said about that wide receiver room and just competition in general, that he wants to throw more talent in that mix, that is, and create some chaos and create.
You know what? So he's very buttoned up, right? Like he's very polished and all that. Like lots of media training and all of that. He almost cursed on our show, and in the best way. Like he almost said, "F some up."
Yeah.
And I think that was I was like, okay, that is the real, like we were asking him what his meetings are like and all of that. That was the real one right there.
And it's a great point. And
thanks, Greg.
I'm looking forward to hearing him later. But my takeaway from that too with the wide receiver group, reading between the line, it's like they have 3 threes right now.
Yeah.
And so they need to get more talented there, even though defense is probably their main focus. All right, number 14. And look, that's like original reporting we're doing here. This isn't all just aggregating. That was our interview that we're crediting, but 14 is aggregating. This is a report I couldn't believe when I saw it today.
I thought you were lying to me when you said it. I thought you were
Cecil
kidding.
Lammey, who used to be at Football Guys, been around a long time. Really respect him. He had some sources and some reporting that Rob Gronkowski is training with the plan to return to play football in 2025. I would guess that's not something where a signing is going to come early in the offseason, but he did mention, and it's a Broncos reporter mentioning this, that, Gronk and Sean Payton got to know each other a little bit on the Fox set, and that might be a fit. I could kind of see that, and so we might have to restart that Canton clock for Rob Gronkowski.
I could just picture how that conversation went. They're like in the green room, like having a coffee together or something like that, and it's like, yeah, bro, I could totally still go. Watch, I'll train and I'll show you. Watch, I could totally. And Sean Payton going, all right, bet, like, let's see it. You know.
Sean Payton.
He'll get a workout at least.
Who finds a brighter hoodie to wear each and every year. Love that man. Had a great joke today. He's not in the show, but he had a great joke. He was thanking Pete Carroll for keeping him the youngest coach in the AFC West, or making him the youngest coach in the AFC West. And you know what's kind of sneaky about Rob Gronkowski? Not that old. His body took a lot of beatings, but he will be turning 36 in May.
How's the liver?
That's a question that needs to be asked, but he's much younger than Mercedes Lewis, who is,
still going.
Still going.
Yes.
That was a surprising report. All right, changing gears. We'll get serious here for a second. Let's listen to Eric DeCosta, the general manager of the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Ravens had released a few statements about the allegations against Justin Tucker and the many women, now over 10, that have alleged sexual assault, misconduct, and the Ravens hadn't addressed it publicly until Tuesday. Let's listen to Eric DeCosta, their general manager, at the podium.
Well, I think a lot goes into that. First of all, a good question. Appreciate the question. The allegations are serious, concerning. The amount of allegations are serious and concerning. I think we're fortunate that the league is doing an investigation. We'll wait as patiently as we can for as much information as we can, and we'll make our decisions based on that.
Yeah, I think the tone that DeCosta brought there, and then later that John Harbaugh also brought, made me think this is just a matter of time. The allegations and investigating all that is much more important than like his status with the Ravens or what happens next with Justin Tucker. But John Harbaugh also said kicker would have been a position we would have been looking at heavily anyways, even putting this aside. So we are looking heavily at that position. And just from a football perspective, my takeaway was I'd be stunned if Justin Tucker is ever, in a Ravens uniform again.
Or an NFL uniform.
Yeah. And the NFL is investigating that, and we'll see if he gets an official suspension. They also did speak much more about just like football matters, and so this is points 15 through 17. By the way, that was 15. I was surprised how optimistic DeCosta was about getting a deal done with Ronnie Stanley. He said it in a way that I've been to enough of these that I don't think it was just GM speak. It actually sounded like, oh, we've made some real progress, and I think this is going to happen.
Well, Ronnie Stanley has been very open about the fact that he wants to be a Baltimore Raven for life. And he said that on numerous occasions this season. So I really do think that this is one of those where we can take what was said at the podium and actually clock it in a serious way, because Ronnie Stanley's been asked about this a few times and has said each time he would like to be a Raven for life. I also think there's something to his tenure with that strength and conditioning and medical department, they really, I mean, amazing to come back from everything, all the things that he came back from, and have a healthy season. And making that progress in the same building, I think, is probably important too.
It really shows what a good organization can do and get as an advantage. I think that lesser organizations cannot, because they asked this man to take a pay cut last year. This is a guy who has been an all-pro.
And he did.
He was forced essentially to take a pay cut and stay. Usually that guy, like Josh Sweat, for instance, this year with the Eagles, he's not going to stay with the Eagles. He's going to take the biggest contract. Usually that guy goes the next year, and he's my number 3 free agent, left tackle with the Baltimore Ravens. A very up and down career, but the highs are really high. A lot of injuries, but it really sounds like the number 3 guy on my list will not make it to free agency. We will see,
The
though.
list that Drew Rosenhaus complimented?
Yes.
Drew Rosenhaus, super agent?
The top 101, getting a lot of pop. By the way, DaCosta thought a lot of good guards. He was very specific about what he thought the Ravens need in this draft, so I always think that's interesting when teams are out front with that. And he said, we're going to be able to find some guards that can play for us in this draft, and it is known as a pretty deep guard class. And then he thought their biggest needs were actually edge and outside linebacker. Can't say I disagree, but just interesting if you think about that roster. They want someone next to Roquan Smith. They really need difference-making edge, more depth there. So I thought that was interesting. Points 18 through 20, and then we're going to take a quick break. Joe Ortiz, the Los Angeles Chargers general manager, was asked about Khalil Mack. He said, and this was news to me, that Khalil Mack is not retiring. I didn't know that was on the table.
I was going to say, I did not actually know that was in consideration, because I just assumed Khalil Mack was just going to keep chugging along.
Joe knew that, Joe Ortiz, and I think he has reached the point of his career, he being Khalil Mack, that it was not a guarantee that he was going to play football again. So I could be wrong. Maybe someone's reported this before. I've never seen that. So I think Joe kind of broke that news. And he also said that they are negotiating, and he sounded hopeful about bringing Khalil Mack back. We'll see if that happens or not. I think that's up in the air, but I think they'll give it a good shot. He mentioned Zion Johnson, who's a first-round pick from a few years ago, who's frankly struggled at guard, will be tried at center. They need a new center this season. That might be like a salvation, just give it a shot, and they're going to bring in another center, but that was interesting. And then I thought he was more optimistic on Mack than he necessarily was on Joey Bosa. Joey Bosa is under contract. He is not a free agent. I think if you look at his contract, it makes sense for Joey Bosa to be released. When asked about Joey Bosa, Ortiz said he wants to retire a Charger. I'd love for him to retire a Charger. I love Joey, the teammate and competitor. Sneaky non-answer there.
Yeah, and a subtle way of publicly asking a player to take a pay cut, really, to stay.
And he just took one, though.
Yeah, I know. And, it's interesting. The local reporters out there covering the Chargers, they do believe that he's going to be released.
Interesting. Yeah, that was from Chris Rim is his name, with ESPN.com. So I should credit, obviously, some of these are coming at the podium, which is free to all, and some, like this one, is at a little side session.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I tried to go back into reporter mode. It's been a minute.
I know, we were lurking. We were lurking in the scrums over here.
So
it was great.
I went to Ortiz. He was one of the first guys up. But I was over at Shane for the first 10 minutes. And, you're checking on Twitter. Man, did anyone ask about Joey Bosa? I just wanted to know that his answer to that question. Did anyone? Well, it's not on Twitter. Then you ask someone, because you don't want to double ask the question.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And then by the time I'm like, Joe, they're like, time's up. And he was like off, and I didn't get it.
Well, I'm proud of you for trying, but here's a little
Sad.
behind the curtain beat writer etiquette. So the reason that wasn't asked at the podium is because the beat. Let me tell the
course I
listener.
know that.
I know you're the best ally to beat writers on the planet.
Yes.
Seriously, it is for years and years and years around the NFL, and now NFL Daily. You are the person that recognizes the beat writers. I'm serious about that. But for the listener, the etiquette is, when you are in these scrums, the really annoying thing is when somebody helicopters in that's not on the beat, because the beat understands that they will get a side session in which the newsworthy questions that they do not want aggregated, and basically their work going to someone else's aggregation before they can write it up themselves. So that's why they don't ask it publicly in front of the entire podium. They wait for the side session. Now, I'm glad it was asked, But you are in danger of being that guy. So I'm glad it didn't work out.
That's one where you make
Team beat writers.
You make your judgment call. There are certain like unspoken rules that a lot of the people here aren't aware of necessarily.
But you are, Greg,
But
because
I
you care.
am.
You care.
And this would be a case where I don't care. Like, don't be so precious, beat writers, that you get the exact same information on the side session. It's gonna get aggregated anyways. It's just a very basic off-season question.
Feel personally attacked.
Yeah, to me that one. I think there are subtleties. This is like, are you confident Joey Bosa's back with the team or not? Like, calm down, beat writers. Everyone can hear that.
Let them
that
have
answer.
their side session.
And there is an outside
not.
chance. I don't know every single situation. Sometimes some coaches don't do side sessions.
But they are
and
aware.
the question hadn't been asked.
But the beat writers are aware. We're not going to go. We're being pedantic now. But the beat writers are aware that will happen.
Sure, but then like, Mike Vrabel, he's not doing any side stuff, and like just a lot of stuff doesn't get asked. Who do you really care about? The other beat writers or the listeners, the audience, the fans of the Chargers? Let's take a quick break. We're going to be back. We're going to have 27 more takeaways, and we're also going to hear from a couple general managers right after this. Back on NFL Daily. All right, we've had 20 of the 47 things that we learned here Tuesday at the Combine.
I think we're making good time.
21, Aaron Glenn.
This was good.
Football guy through and through. Number 1, he was either sweaty or had spilled stuff on his shirt. One or the other. Either way, football guy.
Football guy. Total football guy. I will say, in the Google Doc, bullet point 21 says Aaron Glenn, football guy, was either sweaty or wet.
He's such a football guy.
So without the context, when I opened the doc, I was like, okay, what are we talking about here?
He's just like, we are here to win now. Just he talks, and you definitely get Dan Campbell vibes. And Aaron Glenn was a fully formed personality as a player and a coach before he ever worked for Dan Campbell. I just think some of their strengths happen to be similar as guys you would want to run through a wall for. Let's listen to him talking about just something that made him a little mad.
Are you confident that you can find a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers for 2025?
We're confident we're trying to win games. So that may be, it is what it is. So, and that's it. And the thing is, I don't want to disrespect any of the players we have on our team. And it kind of pisses me off and some of the other players that's what we all talk about. You have Quentin Williams, you have Quincy Williams, you have AVT, now you have Joe Tippmann. All those guys need to be respected as far as winning games also.
I like the fire there from
I love that.
Aaron Glenn. And a little context, partly in reference to a tweet sent out by Quentin Williams where he had a thumbs down emoji for them getting rid of Aaron Rodgers. So when Aaron Glenn is saying that he's pissing off some people, he's not just talking about fans. I guess he's talking about Quentin Williams, and I just love how straightforward he is.
I know. What you see is what you get with him, and I love it. I was over listening to Dan Campbell late in the afternoon at his podium, and he was, of course, the Jets beat was in full over there, and they were asking about Aaron Glenn, and he was just talking about how Aaron Glenn was he said the words, the CEO of our defense, and would be key and critical as a figure and an insight in their strategy meetings, in their situational meetings, those types of things. I think that was pretty cool.
So a lot of what the Combine is, press conference-wise, is confirming things or more evidence that something you think is going to happen is probably going to happen. That was the case with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah speaking on Tuesday, saying about Sam Darnold, we have options. And so, the options would be tag and trade, just let him walk with a compensatory pick, long-term deal. I think it's going to be one of the first two. But he also said, we're so proud of what Sam did for us. And it does feel like he's talking in the past tense. And he said, we don't want to overweight what he did the first 15 games of the season and underweight the last 2 games of the season, or vice versa. Like, it is a really tricky mental exercise to assign the proper weight to everything that happens. But what he finished with is what he left me with, which is like, we also don't want to overlook those two games and why they happened.
I thought that was
interesting.
I thought that was an extraordinarily honest answer, really.
It was.
Because those two games were the floor with Sam Darnold that the Vikings themselves had not yet seen. And so they have data on it now. And I will say, that continued to be the question throughout the year over there is, what is this guy's floor? We're seeing a ceiling at this point. We're seeing what we felt he was capable of and the potential that he's reaching. They didn't quite know the floor. Whenever you're making a decision about the quarterback, you have to ascertain how high or how low that floor is.
This week is the week I believe they'll determine if they have a trade market strong enough to tag and trade him. And we'll find out. March 4th is the day that they have to tag him by. Or else he will be a free agent. Number 6 on my list. Maybe too high, but quarterbacks get a huge position bump up, and he's the top one out there for now.
The list endorsed by Drew Rosenhaus, super agent.
Okay. Now I just feel like you're being condescending.
I'm really happy for you.
Thank you. No, it was a great little surprise. 23 and 24 is from D'Amico Ryans. I liked how much he wanted to improve so many things on his roster. Some guys will just be like, we want to improve everything. He's like, the offensive line is a main point of emphasis.
He's like, yeah, we need help.
He's like, wide receiver is a big area of emphasis. We need wide receivers. They said they have ongoing talks with Stephon Diggs. They liked having him in the building. He's coming off an injury. I think that marriage makes sense for both sides to continue. But he also admitted he doesn't know when or if, I think is unsaid, Tank Dell is going to be back this season. And so, you can't count on those two guys. So he said that's a big main area emphasis. But then he kept going, and he was like, the more I looked at it, actually we need more defensive linemen. And so defensive tackle is another main area of emphasis for him. So those are your Texans' needs.
Yeah, and I mean, that was a point of honesty during lying season. I would agree. And I think anytime you have a dynamic defensive coach like D'Amico Ryans, you're obviously always going to look, okay, where can we improve and where can we just add little pieces in different places all along the roster, even if the offensive needs are the most glaring. And I like this team now as problem solvers, especially with the energy they have in the building with D'Amico, with Nick Caley, the new offensive coordinator that they brought in. I was talking with someone with the Texans to the side of when D'Amico was on the NFL Network set, and they were talking about how just like they believe that they have answers to problems. It's something that, and he said it in a striking way where it's like, this is good momentum. This is new for us. This is great to feel like you actually can go out and problem solve in a way that is functional.
I think D'Amico Ryans is an incredible defensive problem solver. I will give Nick Caserio his flowers. I like how they've built this team up from the front office. The offensive planning was kind of where it was lacking, and so that's the hope with Nick Caley, certainly. 25 through 27, we got a new contract.
One of our favorite players to watch this year.
Shout out Kahlil Shakir, 4-year extension, quote unquote, up to, so who knows what that means, $60 million. So that would be max value. The key number is $32 million guaranteed. You would assume that's mostly, if not all, in the first 2 years of the contract, so that if I had to guess, it'll be somewhere in the neighborhood of like 2 for 32, or some of that guarantee is into the third year, but it's roughly $15-16 million probably in the first 2 years of his contract, which is the rare case, and this is no slight to Shakir or his agent. There are reasons that this happened, but it's a deal the second it's signed. It's like, that's a good value. That's a good deal of business for both sides, and he's a late round pick who's still a year away from free agency. So of course you take $30 million guaranteed. Yes. That's who I would be if I was an NFL player.
And doing it early is ultimately, like you said, that doing it early like that is ultimately going to be good. And I want to be clear on this, he is a volume 1, and they obviously went in the draft and looked around for another player who could be dynamic for them, Keon Coleman. And I think they're going to do it again. I think they're going to keep drafting and sort of overhauling, especially while they have specifically a volume 1 under contract.
And it's interesting because the contract's not for a 1. So that's what I think they love. Yeah. So that he's almost got the contract of a 1. They have a first-round pick. I'm with you. I think they add to that position. I don't think it's going to be Amari Cooper. It was interesting, by the way. This is not one of the points. I'm just adding one for free because we just
48.
We just love our listeners. Sean McDermott was the only coach to speak on Monday. Weird. And he was like, Yeah, Keon Coleman, it was pretty up and down. It was, he said essentially after his injury, it was a little rough, more or less. I'm paraphrasing. Couple more Bills points quickly. Brandon Beane, he said, we'll see on Rasul Douglas, who's a free agent. That's code for he gone. And he was asked about James Cook, a story I didn't mention yet on the show. James Cook being out front saying he wants specifically $15 million a year. I believe I'm worth that money. I want that money now. And he also called James Cook a beautiful man. And I think he would have rathered maybe James kept. I think he meant like he's beautiful that he just speaks his mind, but he's an attractive guy too.
I think there's at least one wholesome moment per press conference between the two of them, whether it's Sean or Brandon Beane. Brandon Beane loves this circuit. He's like on all the. He does all, so I think that's why Sean went early. He's like, yeah, the people are here for Brandon Beane, so let's.
So I'm being a little rude when I said to start the show, all the GMs are starting to look like each other because just to paint the picture, we're at a table, we're at a set. I don't know, 150 feet away, 100 feet away. I'm not good at approximating feet, and so you see the podiums, and they've all got like the pullover.
It's the quarter zip convention.
Yeah, and there's like a group of them. Goody is on my floor in my hotel, and so I've seen him in the elevator. And there's like a mix of like Goody, Brandon Beane. I don't know, like maybe you throw Veach in there. You can kind of tell what Veach looks like. Borgonzi, the new Titans guy, where they all kind of just look like create a GM on Madden.
Sims characters?
Yeah, they just sort of look like GM. And just like I look like, average small podcaster. I
thought you and James Gladstone really hit it off in terms of like similar appearances.
Good tease. We both like our shackets. He's on
your shackets and your hair swoops.
He's on later. That's true. We got to get there. Okay, 28 through 30s, the Eagles section of the show. Howie Roseman. I just like that he said, I can't stop thinking about offensive linemen and D linemen, and that he would consider it unhealthy. So he's got to keep adding there. He wouldn't give an answer on Myles Garrett. And I bring that up because there was an ESPN report that league sources think that the Eagles might be pushing in on Myles Garrett.
I would love that fit. I don't care. Keep getting better. I love it.
That goes along with that he can't stop thinking about offensive linemen and defensive linemen.
It is a very well-executed, performative football show that he puts on every offseason, where every little tidbit and every little appearance and everything is, I think, a mathematical equation toward what this team is going to be and its identity. And honestly, I kind of love that.
That would be amazing if they went big. He spoke about where they were in their process. Not to pat myself on the back again, but we talked on the NFC East preview that they're at an interesting place in their cycle as a team. And I was saying this, that they have a lot of their young 28, 26, 27-year-olds signed long-term. And what he was kind of saying was this is kind of an off-season to push for us because we actually don't have a lot. We have a lot of young guys under contract. We can be a little riskier this off-season. So I'm going to move the points around. And point 42 is actually coming up here. It's a point 30. It's making a big move because the Andrew Berry news.
You literally moved it in the document.
Yeah, I did.
That is how committed to the show Gregg Rosenthal is.
Okay, Andrew Berry is the Browns general manager. He talked about Myles Garrett. We should talk about these two things together.
Yes, of course.
Very strong, saying it's irrelevant how many people have called because we aren't interested in trading him, and when as strong as possible that they are not interested. At first, I wasn't buying from the Browns. Are you buying now?
I could go either way, honestly. I could be tucked into either way because I do believe that they understand that trading a player of that caliber is, it could backfire on you.
He said he didn't see how it would help them. Which, fair.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a crap load of compensation, I could see how it would help you. But that's the thing, is some of this is also posturing, driving the price up publicly. Now, I don't actually think they're getting into this looking to specifically trade him, that it's already a foregone conclusion. I do think that it's really helpful to drive the price up this way and that they could trade him if they had the right price.
I agree. I think that's well said.
Thanks, Greg.
By saying this, it's sort of making the point, you're right, that they're not looking to trade him. And it's going to take that they're ready to keep him. They're probably expecting to keep him unless they get a true motherlode. And we'll see. We'll see if they get a true motherlode. I would love to see it. I still think it could happen. I guess I'm not totally buying it. I think he's expecting the motherlode offer to come. Now it's 0.31. You got to back it all up. Nick Sirianni of the Eagles had some interesting comments. We mentioned on Monday's show with Tom how at least one team, Packers, they're trying to get rid of the tush push. Nick isn't happy about it. Let's listen.
I almost feel a little insulted because we work so hard at that play. The fact that it's an automatic thing, that we work really, really hard, and our guys are talented at this play, and so it's a little insulting to say it's just we're good at it, so it's automatic. We work really hard at it. There wasn't a lot of injuries there. I think that's a little made up, to be honest. Now the numbers will tell the truth, but I don't think there was many injuries with it this year. I can't remember one injury we had on that play, and we ran it more than everybody else.
Yeah, I like the point that he made about there's actually no data for extra injuries on this. Great point, because it's true. I know that.
He came with his note cards, I'm sure, and his little rebuttal points too, because that's a very good point.
It seems like you're putting your offensive linemen and the defensive line too at a bigger risk, but there's so few plays, there's so little data, and there isn't proof of the. I don't think the tush push is staying. That I've come along to there's
We're
no
gonna
way.
Do this every offseason until something else comes along.
I promise not to, actually. Yeah. I promise not to.
No, I'm saying we, the collective zeitgeist.
If it doesn't happen this season, I'm not going to talk about it again. It's not going anywhere. The Eagles are awesome. Our next point, and it's been a long day, and I'm like, what does that even mean? It's Brad Holmes of the Lions, and this is straight from our friend Kevin Patra, who is out banging out great articles. Check him out.
I know.
I can see
him. I can see him from where we're sitting right now. He's been hard at work on this copy for the last couple hours.
He mentioned Brad Holmes of his hometown Lions. Admitted there's probably not room with the way their build is and their roster for another big pass rusher splash. I'm surprised, but that would seem to indicate they would not be in the Garrett business for what it's worth.
A similarly related tidbit, the videos of Aiden Hutchinson running that circulated across social media, as he continues to make his return or make his way toward returning, obviously you're going to see where he's at, and I think build around him.
That just put it together for me. He's up for another contract. Not that it would be this offseason, but they know they're going to pay Aiden Hutchinson top-tier money. So can you bring a Myles Garrett aboard when you know Hutchinson's getting that deal either this August or next February or whenever it's going to be? That's a great point, Jourdan.
This must be how you felt when Drew Rosenthal, a super agent, approached you on the street to compliment your top 100.
Top 101.
101 free agents.
Don't try to take away that one from me. And PFF, I see what you're doing, going 101 now, too. What's up with that? Ryan Poles was one of the gentlemen that we got to speak with today, and we're going to run his interview, like I said, later in the week. They're all not going to be today, but I think he had a little newsy nugget, which is I positioned that they haven't really spent money in free agency on the offensive line. They obviously have needs there, and he indicated that that's an opportunity they're looking to spend on the interior line specifically. So that's something you could expect them to do now.
I thought that, plus his re-emphasis, which I know it's been a couple of years that he has said things like this, but the re-emphasis and sort of emphatic way he talked about needing to run the ball and needing to shore up and better, basically identify better talent and figure out what combination works the best, figure out what center works the best with Caleb Williams. He went over a couple of possibilities of traits in that regard. So, yeah, I thought that was a little bit newsy, little tidbit.
Yeah, a little bit. And he also said the left tackle position will be open for competition, so Braxton Jones is not locked in there, which really says 4 of their spots are pretty wide open, which it's tough. He talked about the juice that Ben Johnson has, points 34 through 35.
Yeah, a lot of dip on that chip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. Ben Johnson, sneaky amount of swag, sneaky amount of he can lead a room, leadership presence, and sneaky tall. All of that with Ben Johnson.
Yeah, you had quite a day of discovery, I think.
I thought he profiles as a shorter guy, but he's not, and he also is surprisingly, swaggy. And Ryan Poles said the same thing that he doesn't know why people think that of Ben Johnson. He absolutely is kind of an alpha.
Because they think of him as the Boston College nerd. That's really what. But that's the thing. He has a presence. It's points 34 and 35.
We're great examples. Look, you can be nerdy and still have all sorts of confidence.
Nerd rage is a powerful thing.
Let's go. I also he said, I didn't hire my friends. I purposefully went outside my circle to hire coaches, including Declan Doyle, his offensive coordinator, who I think it was Sean Payton who said he's like a young Ben Johnson. And Ben Johnson was like, I think that's a good thing. So he didn't hire friends, but he did try to hire his own clone.
Okay.
Weird.
Can we take a minute to recognize the amount of subtle shots that Ben Johnson has taken at other people in the league? And not so subtle. We talked about this with Ryan Poles. You'll hear it later in the week. The Matt LaFleur shot that he took at his opening press conference. The fact that he said he didn't get to where he is because he had a famous last name or a family member in the business, and now he's saying this. I kind of love it. This dude has the juice.
And he's just having fun. Here's another word for taking shots. Being honest. The NFL, this is how they all talk. Actually, I shouldn't say they're all. I don't think Todd Bowles necessarily. There are just guys that operate from a position of kindness and niceness, and any thoughts that they have, they're keeping it to themselves more than that. But 4 out of 5 of them are talking mad, trash to each other and amongst themselves about each other. And so all it is a little bit of honesty.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah.
36 through 38, the Titans. First press conference for...
It's hope season for the Tennessee Titans, everybody.
For Mike Borgonzi. I keep wanting to call him Nate Bargatze.
You did on accident today, by the way. I clocked it.
And he said they've received calls on the number 1 pick. That's point 36, by the way, if you're keeping track. He wants as many top 100 picks as possible. So
me too.
That was interesting. I'm kind of combining those two. He was asked the most important trait from a quarterback, I think by the same guy who's just writing an article, and had a much better answer than Joe Shane. Processing. I like that.
Ooh, good buzzword.
But I think that's true.
Yeah, I agree.
I would say pocket movement or processing if I had to choose one thing.
I'd love a combination of both, if possible.
Of course.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, the question is
as long as we're talking about wants and needs.
Those would be my two. Those would be my two. I mean, it's great to be 6'5" and fast. That's
do you know from experience?
I just think that really matters. Physical traits are also important. Who's got a lot of physical traits? Will Levis. He says they don't want to trade Will Levis. Okay. He also said they want to add through the draft and have a veteran there. So that's Will Levis plus those other 2 guys. I think he knows there's no market probably for Will Levis. We'll see. He also was asked about competing for the division and said, well, we'll manage expectations. I kind of like a GM that's actually not even talking up your chances.
I'm fine with that answer because I think everybody on the planet can see what a rebuild this is going to continue to be.
And sometimes you get a pleasant surprise, 7-win season out of the gate, and then then it's a pleasant surprise.
If you set the bar low,
yes,
it's going to be that much better when you win 4 games when you expected 2.
It's such an obvious cliche that you first hear, at least I did, maybe in your young 20s, undersell and over-deliver. But as cliches go, it's one of the most important, and I think one of the best. I think if you live your life underselling and over-delivering, everyone, set expectations very low.
Was this in dating, or when did you learn this?
No,
okay.
I think more about, I don't know when it came out. It came up in some career setting.
Okay, got it. All right.
I'm talking job specifically.
All right.
In general, not in a job interview. You don't want to undersell yourself too much. But I think in
production,
in general, sneak up on them a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what he's trying to do with this. Yeah.
And then oh, How do you do that?
And then, mid-season, we're like, oh, my God, how fun are the Titans now? We did not see this coming.
You know who kind of snuck up on the cognoscenti? Jason Light of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I used to do the top GMs rankings. I guess I don't do them anymore because it's been a couple years.
Well, because they're not fully supported and endorsed by Drew Rosenhaus, super agent.
Oh, man, the GMs
Can you imagine?
They hate these. It was the only time anyone ever cared about anything. Just guys who would be ranked too low would be very upset. But if I'm doing it again this year, maybe we'll bring it back just as like an episode. Jason Light's got to be top 5. And we talked to him. You'll hear that conversation later in the week. The most newsworthy thing I think he said to us, and he said similar versions of it to other media today, but the way he said it to us, I liked best, which was he said Chris Godwin in the end is going to be on the Mount Rushmore of Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That does not sound like a guy he is ready to let leave the building.
One of the things that I like about doing these in-person sessions, too, is you can see the way someone's face changes when they talk about people. For example, you're going to hear it in a little bit on this episode. I threw out the name Matthew Stafford to John Spytek, and he kept his face extremely frozen.
The Raiders general manager, not giving anything away.
Yeah, and then but in this case, Jason Light was just... he melted. I mean, really. He and how could you not? Chris Godwin's amazing. He totally melted talking about him. Obviously, they have some things. He mentioned this too. They have some things to figure out in terms of like how back fully can he be, and extending that deadline really helps them get a little bit better data set on where he's actually at right now, as well as gives them some time to figure out what the contract would look like.
Unfortunately for them, it also gives Chris Godwin's agent a little time to set the market, and that is. I'm not saying I'm like buzz central here, but that is one item of buzz that I think Chris Godwin, despite the injury, has a real market.
Yeah.
Not a surprise. He's the best wide receiver on the market. It's either him or Amari Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are a lot of people that view him as a great combination of he's going to change our locker room potentially.
Yep.
And as he gets healthier on a 2 or 3 year contract, he's going to get better and be a really plus player. So I think he's going to get a good contract. But ultimately, I think it's going to be from the Bucs. Points 40 and 41. Mike McDaniel revealed that Tyreek Hill had surgery to repair ligament damage in his wrist. There was not a break there. There was ligament damage. But that's noteworthy, so he'll be recovering from that. We'll see if he's a potential trade target for teams this offseason. No real clue on that. He also said the Dolphins are operating as if they won't have Teron Armstead, indicating that he's more likely to retire than not, that they are kind of assuming that unless they are told otherwise. So they have a
lot of work to do.
The Dolphins are sneaky going to be main characters this offseason because I just think they have so many needs and so many players going elsewhere, and just like a lot's going on with the Dolphins right now.
I like that they kept some continuity on their staff. Anthony Weaver, who was on NFL Daily with us back in the regular season, he had some interviews, but I like that they are actually able to keep their building intact. Now, I know that there's some heat locally on Chris Greer and how are you building this roster. There's some heat locally on Mike McDaniel, frankly. And so I think, and he just got the extension, but still, and I think that this is a big season, a pivotal season about what do you guys really want to be made of? What is your identity? It was speed. Mm-hmm. What is it going to be when the speed gets old?
They seem committed to Chris Greer. I talked with Tom Pelissero how, when you guys are out there reporting, you got to be very careful with how you say things. I feel like as long as you preface it with, like, here's some irresponsible speculation out of nowhere. Like, if ever there was going to be a post-draft surprise, if I had to pick one team to do it in the NFL this season, and we've seen it over the years every once in a while with front offices that flip post-draft, it just hit me as you were talking. It's unlikely to happen. I haven't heard anything, but like Chris Greer kind of fits the mold of guys that have suddenly lost their jobs after the draft before. That's just me spitballing. And in the 2% chance that I'm right, I will definitely honk about it.
Yeah, we have to cut and file this entire clip just in case. We put it in the Gregg file.
Number 43 on the list. Andrew Berry, who we talked about earlier in terms of Myles Garrett, also talked about Travis Hunter, the dynamic Colorado prospect who could play cornerback or wide receiver at the next level. Interesting to me that a team right at the top of the draft, the Browns, say they are viewing Travis Hunter as a wide receiver first.
Yeah.
Now, Borgonzi said he thinks he could do both. Barry wasn't saying he couldn't do both, but he said
But that's
wide
where they're
receiver
slotting him. Yeah.
first, which is counter to conventional wisdom and at least how much of the media believes teams will view Travis Hunter. It's fascinating. First time it's ever happened.
And I wonder if there's a little smoke there, because I would think that you would draft a number 1 corner a little bit higher. And I don't know. I just think it's interesting. I wonder if he's trying to maybe drop him a little bit down.
Well, he's at 2. He could always trade down, certainly.
Yeah.
I do wonder.
Maybe you're trying to get him to 2.
Now, here's some dot connecting. Daniel Jeremiah is the only one in the media who is evaluating the players and saying the exact same thing that Barry said.
What does Daniel Jeremiah know?
I'm like, hey, it's not even that
You're
he knows.
windy. You're windy.
I'm
You're Brian
windy
Windhorst right now,
Yeah,
pointing fingers
there
around.
are some connections, Browns, Jeremiah. That's beside the point. But if Daniel Jeremiah sees a player a certain way, doesn't mean all the NFL teams or even a majority are, but it means that some are, and the Browns are apparently one of them. And the argument that he made makes a lot of sense to me. Actually, wide receivers do make more money. So from a Travis Hunter perspective and from an NFL front office perspective, they value true 1 receivers.
Yeah.
And the thing that really stuck with me on DJ's evaluation is there's just not a lot of cornerbacks that are like elite players that are under 180 pounds. Whereas wide receivers, there's a lot. There's plenty. Denzel Ward would be an exception, but Denzel Ward's a guy who hasn't been healthy at all. And can a guy like Travis Hunter hold up having to make those tackles on the edge and stuff? It's a fascinating question we'll talk about as the draft gets closer. Let's do some news. Rap Sheet broke the news that there's already been some trade talks between the Commanders with other teams about Jonathan Allen, their former All-Pro, Pro Bowl defensive tackle. Shout out to the 23 trade candidates show. We threw Jonathan Allen out there just as like a guess, and that one sounds like it could happen.
Yeah, that was actually some early news today too, which is kind of interesting that it hit the circuit before everyone else showed up. So Rap Sheet's always hustling.
That's
man.
he arrived Monday evening, I believe. I know his schedule, and so. You think Rap Sheet's staying in the hotel like me after I saw that Nuggets game? It's like, no, I went home. It's a great feeling to be like, wait, I don't have to stay out super late in like some cigar-filled room till like 2 a.m. I could just go home if I want. This is great. I don't know why it took me so long to realize this.
That's maturity.
And yeah, so I'm sure Rap Sheet was already starting, and a lot of times during this week, and we'll be updating the news all week. Yeah. The conversations that happen in these bars at night, they turn into tweets by our insiders the next day.
And of course, the Commanders also kind of a favorite in the discussion for any possible Myles Garrett trade, kind of one of the favorites as well.
Brian Gutekunst, who I mentioned, looks like a few other...
And is your hotel neighbor.
Right. I'm not trying to blow up a spot, but I guess no one knows where it is. He said on Jair Alexander, we'll see. We'll see is combine code for he gone. So I don't think they're going to bring Jair Alexander back. I'll have to think about where to put him on the 101 if they do cut him and don't find a trade for him, which is what I think will happen. And he was one of many of the general managers to say, we need to be able to rush with 4.
How we do that remains to be seen.
Oh,
again, a subtle, not so subtle reference to some of the players available in free agency and some of these dynamic, especially interior guys in the draft class. They're fiddling over there. Combinations.
Number 46. I was like, we got to get Monty Ossenfort into the show. It's the offseason of Monty. And it's not really catching on yet. I'm pushing this one. It's Monty comes to center stage. I feel like the Cardinals are just ignored. And he's going to need to have more juicy stuff to talk about at the podium to really get people excited. He did say he wanted to add to the quarterback room that was a priority. I think he means the backup position, but just upgrade. I think the backup position is going to be important too.
You're going to get some really good backups in like the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounds of this class, really.
And it's a really deep backup quarterback free agency class.
Bridge guys abound.
It's really weird how cheap guys like Jameis and Mason Rudolph, to me, they have a lot of value, and yet there's actually so many of them that they don't have that much value, I guess. He also said Jonah Williams. This is just a little housekeeping, but I like tracking all this stuff. Jonah Williams, former Bengals tackle, who was paid a lot of money by the Cardinals to help them at the tackle position, but had a major injury, and there was some question whether they might cut him. He made it clear Jonah Williams will be back, so just a little housekeeping. He will remain on the Cardinals. And we wrap up our 47 points. We made up the number to start the show, and then we backfilled 47. We got to leave it to our guy, D. Orlando Ledbetter, and one of our favorite traditions of the year. Explain it and throw it to D.
Yeah, so
D. Orlando.
everyone knows that the University of Georgia always especially in recent years, has just sent a ton of players to the draft. And D-Led, he always stands front and center to Terry Fontenot's press conference and a couple of other guys as well. And he asks them to talk about and by the way, he's one of the all-time beat writer greats in our business, an icon. And he always wears a very unique bow tie, and like he's an awesome dude. And he stands at the very front, and he asked the GM to talk about the X number of Georgia players coming out in the draft, and then he lists them.
Let's listen in. Just give us this. It's kind of like one for us. It just amuses us.
I just love it.
D. Orlando, we're going to listen to his question. Then we're going to take a break. On the other side of the break, you will hear our interviews with the new Raiders general manager, John Spytek. He makes it clear he's just not a friend of Tom, FOT. He's his own guy. He gave me the business a little bit. It was a fun conversation. And then you'll hear immediately after that our conversation with the new kid on the block. Looks like he could be in the new kids on the block. James Gladstone, the general manager of the Jaguars. We will close out the show on the other side of that. But first, D. Orlando, take it away.
Terry, we didn't ask you about the 14 players from the University of Georgia who are at the Combine and 2 from Georgia Tech. In the past, you talked about putting up peaches on the board. Got another 25 players from high schools in Georgia. Just what is that like for, having a fertile local ground for your locals day and kids to scout and maybe help out your team there?